You know, it's like I said earlier in the service, never tell God, or sometimes don't even tell people what you think you're going to do. You know, it's like the old Jewish story, how to make God laugh, you tell him your plans. Right? So I kind of made a plan, made a statement last night that, well, if you were here last night, then you got the sermon. You got the drash, and I shared that. Well, that was fine until about 6:30 this morning. And our little cat, Blackjack, was meowing. And cat nudged me and says, I think he wants to get fed. Get up and feed him. So I got up, and the moment I got up and I was walking to the kitchen, he says, don't go to bed. Don't go back to bed. You need to write a message this morning. So what did I do? I'm such an obedient son. I went back to bed for about an hour. And then God woke me up again and says, I said, get up and write a sermon. I'm like, well, can't I just preach the one I preached last night? Well, they've already heard that one. Get up and write a message, write a sermon. So I've written only a handful of sermons that quickly. I generally don't do that, but I chose to be obedient. And I just want to bless you in God's word today as we seek his face in the study of his word. The message today that God, I believe, I know, gave me is called Repairing, Rebuilding, and Our End Times Restoration. Repairing, Rebuilding, and the End Times Restoration. The passages that I'll be looking at, you can make note of them. We've been studying some of them. First, Leviticus 23, 33 through 43. Then from our Haftorah, Zechariah 14, 16 to 19. But there's a new one I want us to look at. Acts 15. Yes, Jerusalem Council. Acts chapter 15, verses 12 to 21. Now, if you were with us last night, I played that really fun video from Field of Dreams, and we talked about how God wants to build something new and fresh in us. We were reminded of the importance of the Feast of Tabernacles. God literally wants to tabernacle with us today. Amen. He wants to tabernacle. He wants to make an impression upon our heart, bring restoration to our lives, and dwell with us. Isn't that amazing? That the God of all gods, the King of all kings, the Holy One, blessed be he, that the one thing he wants more than anything else is you and to dwell with you. Amen. He wants a covenant relationship with us. And we take, like I said, it's a joyous time, and we take this joyous time seriously, but it's still a joyous time. I found this interesting story. It's about a guy by the name of Levi. Levi built a sukkah on the roof of his apartment, building several days before the eighth day holiday of Sukkot began. After the holiday began, the landlord noticed and demanded that it be removed immediately, claiming it was a violation of the terms of the building lease. But Levi, what did he do? He refused, telling the landlord that since it was a religious observance, that he had a right to build a sukkah there on the top of his roof. The landlord disagreed. And what did he do? He took him to court. He drug him into court, and in court the landlord argued that the sukkah was unsightly. It was against the terms of the lease of the apartment, and was in fact a fire hazard. Levi, however, argued that this is a religious right, and he should be allowed to keep it up. The judge, although happened to be Jewish, so listening patiently and seeking to be impartial, what did the judge do? He said, I agree with the landlord in this case. I thought you're Jewish. No, I agree with the landlord in this case, and I therefore rule that you have 10 days from today to take down your sin. So we can rejoice. We can be happy. You know, it's like God calls us to be happy in his commandments. You know, we can be happy about so many different things. So last night in the message I shared, I was happy about baseball. I was talking all about baseball. But you know what? Baseball did not save my soul.
That's right.
Baseball did not die for me. Baseball did not raise from the dead.
That's right.
There was a little resurrection, though, a few years ago with the Cubs won the World Series. But doesn't even compare, does it? Doesn't even compare. The reality is that the only real hope we have is in God. And we are called to keep and follow his moedim, his appointed times. It's his feasts. People say, oh, those are just Jewish holidays. There are people who say that to you. Oh, I'm not into all that. Those holidays, those are just Jewish holidays. No, they're not. They're moedims. They're God's appointed times. They are God's feasts for all of God's people. To say that they're not for you is to say I'm not one of his people. That's right. Because it's for all of us to follow. It's for all of us to embrace. It's not a Jewish boys club only. See, some people think that, oh, it's just about all you Jews, or this little thing that you Jews do. You know, just yesterday we were doing grocery shopping before the Erev Sukkot service, and there was a woman in the line that had a basket full of groceries, and I had seen her pass by me in the frozen section about 10 minutes before. And normally I don't notice these things, but as she passed by, I looked, and just ever so quickly I glanced right here around her neck, and she had a Star of David on it. And I'm like, wow, Ocala, Star of David, what's this, right? So I was intrigued. So we get done with our shopping, and we go on to the checkout line, and you know, it's Sunday afternoon, and everybody and their brother is shopping. Everybody wants to get their groceries for the week, us included, right? So I'm thinking to myself, this line over here is going a little bit faster. I was wrong, and I'm glad I was wrong, because we were able to stand there and talk for a few minutes. And the woman turned around, and it was the same lady with the Star of David. Come to find out, who is she? She's the temple president at the local Reform congregation. And I said, have you put up your sukkah yet? We had a nice conversation. A reminder that we are part of an overall Jewish community. We are part of this community. We're not fragmented, where they're over there and we're just the Messianics. No, we are part of the Jewish community. And it was a wonderful conversation. I was delighted that she didn't get angry when I told her I was a Messianic rabbi. So, you know, there's going to be more regarding that to follow. But just the Moedim, God's appointed times for each and every one of us, Jew, Gentile, called to embrace this great last day's work, which isn't just the last days. This has been going on since the time of Moses. If you have your Bibles, let's look again at the passage today that we read in Psalm before. Leviticus chapter 23, verses 33. I want to make sure I'm reading the right section here. And Adonai said to Moshe, rereading verse 33, tell the people of Israel on the 15th day of the 7th month is a feast of Sukkot for 7 days to Adonai. On the first day, this is to be a holy convocation. Do not do any kind of ordinary work. For 7 days you are to bring an offering made by fire to Adonai. On the 8th day you are to have a holy convocation and bring an offering made by fire to Adonai. It is the day of public assembly. Do not do any kind of ordinary work. So if you called in sick today or decided to take a vacation day, I applaud you. You're keeping God's word here. These are the designated times of Adonai that you are to proclaim a holy convocations and bring an offering made by fire to Adonai, a burnt offering, a grain offering, a sacrifice and drink offering, each on its own day. Besides the Shabbats of Adonai, your gifts, all your vows and your voluntary offerings that you give to Adonai. But the 15th day of the 7th month, when you are gathering your produce of the land, literally your first fruits, you are to observe the festival of Adonai 7 days. And the first day is to be a complete rest, and the 8th day is to be a complete rest. And on the first day, you are to take choice fruit, like the entrog, palm fronds, like the lulav, thick branches, and river willows. You see the willows there? You are to take those and celebrate in the presence of Adonai your God for 7 days. Celebrate with this. Rejoice before the Lord. You are to observe it as a feast of Adonai 7 days in the year, as a permanent regulation, vador lador, from generation to generation, and keep it in the 7th month. You are to live in a sukkah for 7 days. Every citizen of Israel is to live in a sukkah, so that generation after generation of you, you will know that I made the people of Israel live in a sukkah. When I brought them out of the land of Egypt, I am the Lord their God. I am Adonai, their God. You know, powerful text here, God telling us how we should actually practice this holiday. It's very detailed. It's also detailed in Numbers 29, as well as Deuteronomy 16. And in it is a command that is unlike any other command in Scripture. You can search high and low throughout the entire Tanakh, and you're not going to find anything like it. What does it tell us to do? It commands us to rejoice. To rejoice. I think that's neat, that God takes the opportunity to say, I want you to be happy. I want you to rejoice. I want you to seek me and find fulfillment in me. But during the weeks of the Sukkot, God calls us, be happy, rejoice, and choose. It's a choice, isn't it? We have to choose to be filled with joy. It's not like you just wake up on Sukkot morning and all of a sudden you're joyous. If you are, it's because you're already walking in alignment with what Sukkot is. But you have to choose to walk in joy, don't you? God doesn't just throw you on the ground and say, be joyous, you. And it doesn't just pour into your ear when you're sleeping the night before and you wake up and, oh, I feel like a robot right now. I'm going to feel joyous today. See, it doesn't work that way, does it? We have to choose to walk in joy. We have to choose to be happy. Have you ever noticed sometimes you call somebody on the telephone and you can tell just by the tone of their voice whether they're smiling or frowning? Can't you? You can always tell. See, joy is a choice. Happiness is a choice. And I think we forget that. We think that somehow God's just going to, put us on the ground and pour it into us. But the fact is, He wants to pour it into us, but we need to be willing to receive it. This is confirmed as I read at the beginning of the service, Leviticus 23:40. On the first day, you were to take the choice fruit, the palm fronds, the thick branches, the river willows, and celebrate. It's interesting. It's not like God saying, hey, you, be joyful. But in essence, He is, isn't He? He knows what we need before we can ask for it. We can ask for so many things, but what we really need is His joy. What we really need is simcha, happiness and joy and fulfillment that only comes through Him. It only comes from Him. We cannot choose, we can choose to do things the world's way. But I think we should choose to do things God's way, to walk in exceeding joy. So the question here is, why should we rejoice? One, I believe it's because God's given us a provision for it. God has given you a provision. And if you have your notepad today, write that down, the word provision. God is giving you provision to rejoice. In the wilderness wanderings, we had come out of Egypt. I find that interesting. When we read the end of this text, God makes it clear that the reason we live in a sukkah during this week is because we're not to forget that we wandered for 40 years in the wilderness. And it's like what I said last night. What happened when we wandered in the wilderness for 40 years? Did the shoes wear out? Did the clothing wear thin? Did we go hungry? Yeah, sometimes we had to eat that manna, which in the Hebrew literally means, what is it? But God gave us food. Did you know that? Manna means, what is it? What's this? Oh, you got vault. What is this, Moses? Right? But every day we had food to eat. Every night and every day we had God's presence with us. Every day our clothing did not wear out. And when our enemies sought to destroy us, every day they were pushed back by His presence. Because He dwelt with us. Every need was met. We face trials ongoing all throughout our lives, don't we? And we forget that God meets every need. Look at the rejoicing we were just doing at the beginning of my drash a moment ago, talking about Corey and Jill getting on a plane and coming home. We have a lot to rejoice about. We have a lot to be thankful for. As a congregation, we can rejoice that God has given us this beautiful building and our Living Waters family. I'm telling you, it's the envy of many. It's the envy of many. So we shouldn't take these things lightly. We should fully embrace, enjoy the good things that God is doing in our life. And what's the opposite of joy? I think it's sadness, but it's also despair and faithlessness. Because if I'm not in joy, then what am I going to do? I'm going to walk around and just say, poor me. The whole world's out to get me. Things never go my way. I joke about Eeyore. Eeyore had his little tail, and he was always sad, right? Well, I'd be sad and upset too if my backside had a tail nailed to it, okay? Like Eeyore. And we walk around like we've got something nailed to us, when the only thing that's really on us is God's presence. Amen. That's what He has for us. And when we choose to walk not in joy, we're not in joy. We're in those miserable places because guess what? In that moment, you're choosing to be there. In that moment, that's what you want. Well, you don't know what I'm going through. Yeah, well, we all know because we all go through it. You ever wonder about that? People say, well, you don't know what I'm going through. Well, you know what? We all go through those things. We all have what they call the dark night of the soul. But the thing is, you're going to stay there or you're going to embrace joy. Embrace happiness. Embrace the promise, the fulfilled promise of Messiah Yeshua. So we can be glum and so sad. But the reality is God says, no, wait, stop this week. I've got a memo for you. I just sent you an email. And it says, be happy. Be full of joy. Let me fill your heart with goodness. And we could just go through the rest of our week. We could finish our service today. How many of us have to go back to work tomorrow? Okay? And you could just be so, I'm at work. I've got to be at work. I wish I still had my 3-day weekend. No, we can be in joy the entire week. That's right. The entire week, because it's a choice. We can be in joy because He is a faithful and loving God. Amen. Secondly, our first word was provision. Our second word, if you want to write it down, is promises or promise. There are promises fulfilled in Adonai. That's why you can be full of joy today. It's interesting when we look at the whole of the Torah. What do we see over and over and over again? We see God keeping His promises. Let's look real quick. In a few weeks, we're going to be in this parsha, Lech Lecha, which actually I believe is probably my favorite parsha in the entire Torah. Genesis 12. And I'm just going to read this real quick here. Promises fulfilled. It's interesting when God promises something to you and then you look back and say, wow, I can see how God did this and fulfilled this and that. You may have not seen it when it first started out, but looking back, you're amazed at the fulfillment of His promises. We can look back at Abraham's life and see the same thing, and we're all the recipients of it. Now Adonai said to Avram, get yourself out of your country, away from your kinsmen and away from your father's house, and go to the land which I will show you. I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you. And I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. And I will bless those that bless you, but I will curse anyone who curses you. And by you, Abraham, by you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Isn't the whole world blessed because of Israel? The whole world is blessed because of Israel. It's true. So Avram went as Adonai had said to him, and Lot went with him. Abraham was 75 years old when he left Haran. And Abraham took his wife Sarai, his brother's son Lot, and all their possessions which they had accumulated, as well as the people they had acquired in Haran. And they set out for the land of Canaan, and entered into the land of Canaan. And Avram passed through the land, the place of Shechem, in the oak of Moreh, and the Canaanite, where then in the land Adonai appeared to Avram and said, to your descendants I will give this land. So he built an altar there to Adonai, who he had appeared to him. God has restored, fulfilled. He's done what He has promised. And even though we were dispersed throughout all the world, now Israel is a nation. You know, many of us have gone to the land, and we've seen this reality. The desert has bloomed. God has provided and promised. And now Israel is a blessing to the whole world. All the top scientific technologies that are coming out today and that have come out since the beginning of the nation of Israel, most of them come from Israel. Your computers wouldn't work. Half the stuff in your car wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Israel. Why? Because God blesses Israel. So my question to you is this: if God is so faithful to Israel, even in the midst of such great trial, her enemies hate her violently, venomously, want to destroy her, yet God blesses her so much, how much more for us here in the diaspora, both Jew and Gentile alike? How dare we think that God's promises are for them and not us? We say, well, I can't walk in joy because all these sad things that are happening in my life. No. Is God a respecter of persons? Does he show favorites? Well, I like this guy over here, but this guy over here, I don't like him at all. So God doesn't do that. If he did that, he really wouldn't be God, would he? He would be just as fickle as we are. But he makes promises, and he fulfills them. We declare that in our liturgy, that he speaks and then he performs. Don't we say that every week with the Haftorah blessings? He speaks and then he performs. Why? Because he's faithful and true. So we can walk in joy because he's a promise keeper. He is the ultimate promise keeper. And finally, there is security in Adonai because of his, another P, presence. His presence is always with us. In Deuteronomy 31, 7 and 8, that's found on page 266 in your study Bible, we see how God's presence is with his people. Always, always. Such a powerful text. 266. Would have helped if I had marked that. Deuteronomy 31, 7 and 8. Next, Moshe summoned Joshua, and in the sight of all of Israel said to him, Chazak, Chazak, be strong, be bold, for you are going with the people into the land Adonai swore to their ancestors he gave them. You will be the one causing them to inherit it. But Adonai, it is he who will go ahead of you. He will be with you. He will neither fail you nor abandon you. So don't be afraid or downright. See, God fulfills and he promises. And how do we know that he's with us? It's because his presence never departs from our midst. See, even when Israel was sent out into battle, we just got done reading this in our Parshiot, right? Moses has died and he's gone to be with the Lord, right? He's just about to die. And the baton has been passed. The baton has been passed, and Joshua is now the new leader of the nation of Israel. The new leader. But you know what? He could easily fall into despair. I always wonder, who is these words for the most? Is it for the children of Israel, or is it for Joshua? Now, we can argue that it's for both, but I believe a lot of this is for Joshua. Can you imagine how Joshua is feeling in this moment? Moses is 120 years old, and although his eyes have not grown dim, and he's still strong for a 120-year-old man, right? He's still Moses. He's bigger than life. How do you feel those shoes? You don't. You don't fill those shoes. For me as a congregational leader, I've been in situations where I've gone into communities to serve, and I'm taking over from the role of a previous leader. And that leader might have been bigger than life, right? And they love their pastor. They love their rabbi. He might have served there for 20 years. But he's retiring. He's stepping down. And you got to fill those shoes. And you know that there's going to be people that are going to stay. There are going to be people that are going to champion you and support you. And there's also going to be people that are going to say, well, my heart was with the old guy. Even though he's 86 years old and he's retired and he's moved to Boca Raton, okay? No, he's still my pastor, right? He's still my rabbi. And the battle, the struggle is hard, right? Right? But the fact is, are we strong in our own strength, or are we strong in his? Do we have joy because we know the promise of the outcome of what God's going to do? Or do we look at the circumstances and slip into this depression? Oh my goodness, how could I ever fulfill this task? And that's where we find Joshua. Yeah, he was a strong, mighty man of God, but he was still a man. And he still had struggles, just like every one of us. So what does Moses tell him? Hazach, hazach, v'ni hazeh. Be strong, and be strengthened. Because the strength is not from me, Moses is saying. The strength is from God. Because you know what? Moses didn't feel too strong a few decades back either, right? He would rather just, herd those sheep in Midian. You want me to go up on the mountain and what? It's the proverbial, what you talking about, Willis moment. Okay? But see, we don't equip ourselves. God equips us. We don't call ourselves to ministry. God places us there. And we are successful only because of his Spirit, his presence that never leaves or forsakes us. So that's why we can be full of joy today, because God never, ever, 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 did I say that? Ever leaves or forsakes us. He never will. He never has, and he never will. He is faithful and true. Yes. But we forget this point. In the famous devotional, Our Utmost for His Highest, Oswald Chambers, in a devotional called The Never Forsaken God, writes, what line of thinking do my thoughts take? Do I turn to what God says or to my own fears? Am I simply repeating what God says, or am I learning to truly hear him and then to respond after I have heard what he says? For he himself has said, I will never leave you or forsake you. So we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper. I will not fear. What can man do to me? Hebrews 13, 5 and 6. I will never leave you, nor for any reason, not my sin, selfishness, stubbornness, nor waywardness. Have I really let God say to me that he will never leave me? If I have not truly heard this assurance of God, then let me listen again, Oswald Chambers says. I will never leave you or forsake you. Sometimes it is not the difficulty of life, but the drudgery of it that makes me think God will forsake me. When there is no major difficulty to overcome, no vision from God, nothing wonderful or beautiful, just the everyday activities of life, do I hear God's assurance even in these days? We have the idea that God is going to do some exceptional thing, that he is prepared and equipping us for some extraordinary work in the future. But as we go in his grace, we find that God is glorifying himself here and now in us, at that very moment. If we have God's assurance behind us, the most amazing strength becomes ours, and we learn to sing, glorifying him even in the ordinary days and in every way of life. See, God's calling us to rejoice no matter what the circumstances are. If somebody could bring me a bottle of water, that'd be great. It's in the front pew there. Thank you.
To your left.
So, we see this in our passage that we just read, that God is always with us. He's never going to leave us or forsake us. Thank you so very much. He is always with us. But not only is his presence always with us, and I want to end with this, we are called today to be a prophetic people. Well, let's just say that together. Can we say that together? We are a prophetic people. Let's say that. We are a prophetic people. Now, I didn't say pathetic. I said prophetic. All right? Sometimes we might feel like we're a little pathetic, but that's okay. It's his strength. It's his power. It's his calling within us. See, we see this in the scriptures. There's a prediction about your future. There's a prediction about all of us. We already read it before in Zechariah. Turning with me to page 890, Zechariah 14:16 to 19. 14:16 to 19. Finally, everyone remaining from all the nations that came to attack Jerusalem will go up every year to worship the King, Adonai Sevaot, and to keep the festival of what? Sukkot. If any of the families of the earth does not go up to Jerusalem to worship the King, Adonai Sevaot, no rain will fall on them. Sounds like the Ve'ahavta, doesn't it? No rain will fall on them. If the families of Egypt doesn't go up, if they refuse to come, they will have no annual overflow. They'll have no surplus. It's like getting to the end of the week and you're wondering how you're going to pay your bills. That is the best they can hope for. There will be no overflow from the Nile. Moreover, there will be the plague with which Adonai will strike the nations that do not go up to keep the feast, the festival of Sukkot. We have a prophetic fulfillment as God's people to keep his Moedim. Well, like you said, isn't this just for the Jews? No, remember we covered that a minute ago. This is for all of us. We all have a responsibility to embrace these holy times, these convocations, these feast days of Adonai, his feasts, not the Jews. But with the prediction, with the promise, comes a fulfillment. If you turn with me, this is powerful, and I'm coming to a conclusion here. Acts chapter 15. Acts chapter 15. What a powerful text. Turning to verse 12. 15:12. Now we all know the importance of Acts chapter 15, don't we? It's the Jerusalem Council. It's when the early Messianic community made the decisions, prayed about, sought the Lord, and decided, how are we going to deal with all these Gentiles that are getting saved? They're coming to faith in Messiah. You know, it's interesting. The table is kind of turned in Messianic Judaism. Have you noticed that? It used to be, what are we going to do with all the Gentiles that are coming into Messianic Judaism? Now, we have so many Gentiles, we need to put our attention on reaching Jews for Yeshua, because it is Messianic Judaism. And although that is a different sermon altogether, that is an important point we cannot escape. But here, what are the Talmudim, the disciples, talking about? What are they looking at? Well, let's look at this text. Then the whole assembly kept still as they listened to Barnabas and Shaul, Paul, tell what signs and miracles God had done through them among the Goyim, among the Gentiles. And Yaakov, James, broke the silence to reply, brothers, he said, hear what I have to say. Shimon has told in detail what God did when he first began to show his concern for taking from among the Gentiles a people to bear his name, to bear his name. And the words of the prophets are in complete harmony with this, for it is written, after this I will return, and I will rebuild the fallen tent of David. I will rebuild its ruins. I will restore it, so that the rest of mankind may seek the Lord. That is all the nations who have been called by my name, says Adonai, who are doing these things. And this has been known for ages. Therefore, my opinion is that we should not put ourselves in a way of the Gentiles who are turning to God. Instead, we should write them a letter telling them to abstain from things polluted by idols, from fornication, what is strangled, and from blood. For from the earliest times, Moshe has had in every city those who proclaim him, with his words being read in the synagogues every Shabbat. So what is significant about this text? Well, I think that in many ways, what this text is talking about is not just the Moedim, but also Sukkot. First Fruits of Zion says this very interestingly about this text. The rebuilding of the Sukkot of David represents the representation and restoration of the Davidic monarchy in the Messianic kingdom. It is in that day that the Gentiles will be called by God's name and will be included into the kingdom. This connects the festival of Sukkot to the Messianic era and alludes to the day when, according to Zechariah 14, all nations will go up to Jerusalem to celebrate the festival, as Rashi points out, includes the obligation to dwell within a sukkah. So we see here in this text, it says, after this, I will return and I will rebuild the fallen tents. I will rebuild the sukkah of David. How is the sukkah of David rebuilt in the last days? It's by allowing, opening, welcoming, and encouraging the Gentile to stand in unity with the Jew as one new man. Amen. As a one new man. Not fragmented, not cut off. Oh, we're just Jews and you're just the Gentiles. You know, I've heard people say, oh, I'm just a Gentile, I'm just a Gentile. What is it? I think that's a deception of the enemy. It's not that a Gentile stops being a Gentile. But, you know, we're not second-class citizens if we're not Jewish. And if we're Jewish, we're not walking 3 feet off the ground either. We are all one in Messiah. And what are we called to do in these last days? Why is Sukkot so important? We're called to build this last day sukkah, a dwelling place for God and God's people, Jew and Gentile alike. You know, I shared a few moments ago about that temple president at the Reformed congregation. You know what would blow that congregation away, or any Jewish congregation away, is if some Erev Shabbat Friday night service, handful of Gentiles going in there from a Messianic community and worshiping in a Jewish way, doing it accurately, honoring Torah and them. Then the years of pain and the hurt and the misconceptions drift away. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. So where is our heart? We're called to build something here. And you know, it's easy for us to get discouraged, to look at outward circumstances and wonder, are we really that successful? Are we really making a difference in Ocala? And I want to encourage you that we are. We are. We are building something here. No, God is building something here in and through us. A dwelling place for both Jew and Gentile, the one new man. And at the center of it is the one that Sukkot is all about, Yeshua, our Messiah. So you have a prophetic calling, my friends. You have a prophetic anointing. And you cannot walk in fear. You must walk in joy. And when the world sees that joy all over you, they're going to want to know what's different about you. And you can tell them about the real meaning of Sukkot. Amen. Father, we just thank you and praise you for your goodness. Praise you for your mercy that is new every morning. And Lord, I just pray that you would fill us up to overflowing today. I pray, Lord, we feel joy now, that you would give us a double and triple portion. Lord, that even when we're driving home today, the smile on our face would be so contagious that even the people driving by us would want to know what's up. That they would want what we got. Father, let our joy in you be contagious. Let us be a contagious congregation unto you. Full of joy and happiness and peace. Comfort us, heal us, restore us, and put us in that place where you can use us, we pray. In Yeshua's holy name. Amen and amen. Please stand with me if you